times a charm, maybe? I don't know. It's been quite an event trying to get the stream to work tonight because I'm not at home and I don't have any of my equipment. I just have my iPad, my iPhone I started with, and that didn't work at all. So it's just been a big old mess. But what is art if not an adventure? Okay. Well, my intention was to talk about what I bring with me when I'm traveling around, and I'm gonna be doing some art stuff. Where even is my camera on this thing? Oh, okay, there we go. So I can actually look at the people. All right. I talked a little bit already on the first 3 minutes of the stream about having a few items for watercolor, because watercolor travels well. I don't have to have paint tubes and a separate palette and worry about having wet paint to deal with. I can just close that, the palette's built in, and yeah, oil paints that take forever to dry. I know people do plein air painting with oil and that can work really well for them, and that's great, but that is not something I'm set up to do well. Beyond that, kind of a sketchbook, I do like to bring other random paper to work on. So I have this really fun, it's like a junk journal, it's called. I got it on Etsy, and it's just full of all these different papers. And I barely touched it, because I think when I first got it, I was being a little bit, too precious with it. Like kind of afraid to really get in there and get stuff on the pages and get dirty. So I need to start using it and start making a mess. So that's another thing. A little handy travel jar of water. Paper towels, always necessary. And yeah, I mean, that's the main stuff of it. Besides, I can show you what I actually have in my, besides a couple of pencils and eraser. Because I like to work multimedia, I have a bunch of other random markers and things that I like to bring with me. A pipette for when I do the watercolor. I like to have that to pre-moisten my pans. A few paint markers, acrylic paint markers at Posca's. I have some, oh, here's another paint marker. These are actually watercolor markers. I haven't played around with them too much. They are, yeah, it's literally watercolor paint. So, water soluble. So some of those. One more mechanical pencil. I have also, ooh, there's another paint pencil. One random green pen, because you never know. And a few other different weights of like micron style pens. One brush pen, one that's a 0.8, one that's a 0.5 measurement. And I did bring also a hard soft, a 4B pencil to play around with, and something to hold my brushes. So it's a little hard now with the setup, because I don't have a holder for my iPad where I can tip it so you guys can see what I'm doing. So let me think. I'll try to think if I can figure out a way to show you art while I continue to blather. I also brought a book with me to read, and this is one that was recommended to me by Kaz Weirdness, and it's Refuse to Choose. It's a book that's about, like, if you're what this book refers to as a scanner, somebody who wants to do all of the things, not to specialize in something, but there's so many things you're interested in, there's so many things you want to try in the world, that it makes it almost impossible to get by and to work and just make decisions and follow through on anything, and you end up buying supplies for all these different things perhaps and never actually diving in, or just once or twice, and then you learn how to do a thing and then you never do it again. All that's very me. All of it's, I'm sure sounds very kind of ADHD as well, which I also am, and I think that there can be some carryover there. I just started the book. I barely started it. Just what's it here? So the scanner, or ADHD in me, sees all this and is just like, oh God, are we really gonna be able, how long is it gonna take to get the value out of this book? But I'm working at it a little bit. I have some time to just relax for the day and for tomorrow, which has been really nice. And I think that when I'm at home in my art studio, I tend to carry a lot of expectation, all these things that I'm supposed to be accomplishing. And that can actually kind of freeze me up, where I accomplish not nearly enough. A little bit on this, a little bit on that, not much gets completed. And I always have a sense of like guilt about it, that I'm not getting enough done, that I'm not accomplishing what I need to accomplish. So it's been kind of nice, even it's just been not even a whole day that I've been here yet. And I've been doing some sketching and doodling, a little bit of reading. I downloaded a sound editing, music making app. That's another one of my interests that I've been kind of flitting back and forth on for quite some time. And I just downloaded it so I can actually start playing around with that. I was playing with that, but I've also been just watching a lot of YouTube videos of artists, of people painting, whether it's time-lapse paintings or artist vlogs, or people talking about techniques and stuff. And I've just kind of had that in the background while I've been doing some things or just relaxing. And it's had this feeling of filling my cup that I haven't gotten to have in a while. The one time that sometimes I feel like that is when my art friends, we get together and have art days. And we were actually going to do that this last weekend. We were supposed to go into the city to an art fair, and I talked about it on the stream. I've been very excited about it, but I got sick. So I had to cancel it, and that was incredibly disappointing. But it is something that I've had to learn to deal with over a lot of my life. I do have some chronic health issues that sometimes I can go a while without much problem, but sometimes it's a real problem, and that's very, very frustrating. And it's another thing that's very easy to beat yourself up about, for not accomplishing enough, for not, experiencing the things you want to experience, for not doing the work you need to do because you're down and out, because you can't function, because you can't think. And that's really hard. And it's been a long time, and I'm gonna date myself with it here. When I was not too long out of college, and I had a MySpace account, and this is the part that dates me a little bit, but I wrote a blog on there about the frustration of having pain and not being able to accomplish things when all you really, really want to do is accomplish things, and how frustrating it is. And I had been following an artist who I very much respect and admire, especially at that time. Less recently have I been following them, but at the time, huge, and this will always stick with me. It was Ray Caesar. He does these gorgeous, gorgeous digital paintings. And he actually responded to that blog post. Obviously he read it and talked about his own experience of having chronic pain and having to push through when you can, that it informs who you are, it informs your practice. It makes you a better artist, potentially. It makes you a more interesting person, a stronger person, because you have to be. And that response was so huge, especially at that time. I was also, I think, dealing with a lot of depression back in those days too. But yeah, that was really tough, and it still is tough, and it's still frustrating all the time. But nonetheless, it's possible. There are going to be days where you're not going to achieve as much as you want to achieve, and it can be very difficult if you try to set timelines for yourself and you have expectations of accomplishing certain things. But it's just a reality that you can't beat yourself up over. So that's certainly been a thing. I also came across this thing this week that I thought was a little interesting because I saw it in multiple places. And you guys see me create random stuff. It's a lot of playing when I'm streaming on here. A lot of times I'm kind of screwing around, seeing what happens when I do X, Y, and Z. And not always, it doesn't always turn out great, but I'm very clear that that's not necessarily my intention. This isn't about being precious and perfect. Sometimes I work on more serious stuff, but sometimes it's literally just messing around and having some fun creating. I have seen a couple different artists talk about how showing their process has made them not enjoy it because they feel such intense pressure, as I think a lot of people do with social media, to have it be perfect, to have it be your highlight reel. And that makes me sad because I think making it a highlight reel removes the reality of it. I don't care who you are, how good you are, you go through some garbage before you come up with the great things, Not everything you make is gonna be amazing. Sometimes it goes through an ugly phase before it gets to be amazing, if it does. And some things just don't come to fruition at all. And that people feel such pressure that even their process has to look away and be Instagram ready. It makes me sad. Show the ugly parts too, because that's real and that's relatable, and it's it just is. It's part of the creative process. It's ugly sometimes. It's real ugly sometimes. But yeah, that's something that's been on my mind recently, and I hope that the people who are struggling with that find a way to come to terms in a way that is more productive for them and more freeing. But yeah, that's where I am. I was gonna do some sketching and some art. Another thing I brought with me was I have these random boards, just scraps. Some of it is matte board. This was actually a cut matte piece from a frame that I didn't need this for, or I cut a different matte for it. And this is from an illustration board. And I have another one here that I did a sketch on with the idea of painting this a little bit. I was doing some sketching out of my mind, just random ideas to have fun with. And then I'm like, I kind of want to work off of some reference. Let me see what I can find. And I was digging around the house here. And I didn't find much real interesting to work with, but I found a couple of catalogs for clothing. And I just picked out a random picture and I'm like, let's see what I can do with that. One thing that I never really noticed before is how flat the light, look at beach scenes, lovely beach scenes, and the lighting is flat. There's barely shadows. They must have some crazy amount of reflecting boards and stuff out there. And it's obviously a very, very overcast day, but yeah, it's interesting. Interesting observation. Because I thought, one thing I'm not the best at is painting fabric and cloth. So I thought, let me pick a picture, see what I can do with it, and then maybe I'll get some experience doing some folds in fabric. And there's none visible. You can see the folds here where it's gathered, but other than that, it's just very, 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 very flat. That and the pattern too, I guess, doesn't help, but oh, the humanity of the photoshopping and the light manipulation. And it definitely is some photoshopping because there's a little bit of shadow being cast down here that's straight up green. And you know that wasn't happening anywhere else in the picture. So just random observations, but yeah, turned it into a little kind of goofy sketch, and I'll probably paint on it and draw on it a little bit. But if I had a bigger carry for this time around instead of just my backpack, my travel, my Creative Weirdo backpack from Mr. Kate, I would potentially be able to bring a table easel, there's the word, a table easel, and then you could set up and have something upright. I've done that before for art weekends, and that's a nice way to be able to work at a table at least and still like feel like you're doing your proper thing, not necessarily on just a floor or whatever, which is where I am right now. And because I'm working someplace where I know it's not my studio, another thing I have is a sheet of parchment paper, just to make sure that I can protect any surface. This isn't terribly, none of this is terribly messy stuff, but just in case I dribble any water or some paint in water anywhere, I want to be able to clean that up very easily and not leave a mess anywhere. Yeah, oh, one more thing that I brought that I forgot to mention. I got this with a little, when I ordered this little travel palette, watercolor palette, is a travel watercolor brush, and it actually has a little reservoir of water in it. So in theory, you could do some painting without this. And then it just is, you can kind of squeeze that and the brush will have some, you can see that, I don't know if you can tell my fingers are like a little wet from the brush just by squeezing it. So it has a little like self-watering feature. I haven't messed with it much. When I'm not in love with it, I probably could screw around with it more. It's probably like, it's a nice feature that it has a cap on it, because when I'm traveling with these brushes, really should have a proper brush storage. The only reason I just roll them up in something hard when I'm carrying these brushes, like a cardboardy type paper, because I can keep them in the side of my bag where they won't get crushed or anything. But also, I do have a couple of brush holders or carriers that are good for traveling, but they're quite large. And I only needed a few brushes, and watercolor brushes are often shorter. They're not like the real long ones like for oil or acrylic painting. And it just seemed like overkill to take up that much space in a bag with them. But this was all pure chaos tonight, this stream. It started out all right, and then I don't know. But such as life, such as things go, and you roll with the punches. So we're gonna call it an extremely short stream this time, and be back to it on Thursday, when I will be back in my studio for a more regularly scheduled, normal stream with everything as it ought to be, and hopefully no technical surprises. So apologies for the mess of a stream that was tonight, broken up into a couple that are all fractured up, and I think lost everybody along the way. So I'm very sorry for that, but thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll catch me on my next stream, which going forward from here, not only have I learned some lessons about streaming mobily, but also like I won't be mobile. Next time I'll just be back home. Okay, anyway, take care, have a creative, wonderful week, and hopefully I'll see you Thursday morning, 10 a.m. Central. Bye.